Everyone was
Yeah.
there for the same reasons for DIY hardcore punk rock, you know,
Right.
and it was an era that can never be recreated because like it was so word of mouth, it was so pure, like it was such a small little you needed to know.
Hey everyone, this is Chris Grosso with the Indie Spiritualist podcast on Ram Dawson's Be Here Now network. It has been a while, a little over 2 years actually, and I could not be more excited to have my first guest back, someone that I have very much looked up to for a long time. We're talking back to the 90s in the New England hardcore scene, Brian Fair. Brian, thank you so much for joining me, my friend.
Dude, thanks for having me on. Glad to have you back in the saddle and glad to be the first guest in 2 years. We'll shake off all the cobwebs together and
That's right.
and get to it.
We're a little more gray than we used to be, you know, or bones to go.
Indeed. Indeed. It's funny though. My hair, it's confusing because the bottom of my hair is still 1993. So it's all like chestnutty and nice. But up here, yeah. Oh yeah, the gray is creeping in.
Yeah, my goatee, man. I was looking at my Facebook memories and like even 3-4 years ago, little grays. Now it's over. It's like, all right.
Same thing with the beard. And that's what's funny about having, 25, 30-year-old dreads is the you can't hide the facial hair. So yeah, I'll be like looking all brown, but that stuff's coming in just straight Santa style now, you know.
That's what's up. But I think for people like us, I don't want to speak for you, but like people always say like, you don't look 45 to me. I'm like, dude, I'm an 11-year-old. Or I moisturize.
Exactly.
I'm a big fucking kid. Yeah.
Exactly. And doing the things that always like had the spirit of youth. That's what keeps you young, you know, still playing hardcore shows, still skateboarding, you know, just now I'm doing it with my kids, either on the side of the stage or at the park with me, you know, so that's the only difference. That's the stuff that keeps you young, man. So, you know,
it is. I saw the video of your daughter, I believe. You posted on Instagram. That's so cool, man. Like,
totally.
I don't have kids of my own. I have 2 nieces though. And my brother, I got to give a shout out to him, Jay. He is just as big of a Overcast fan as I am and Shadows Fall. But, you know, We've been to your guys' shows so many times with Dissolve, but he has 2 daughters, my nieces, Addie and Ellie, and they're amazing. And, you know, he's getting them into skateboarding and looks like golfing and hockey and soccer and basketball. But yeah, it's so cool to like share skateboarding, especially, you know, with the young girls too.
Yeah, totally. It's such a different landscape for that than it was when we were growing up, you know, like first of all, the accessibility is insane with skate parks everywhere. And just the fact that they can see it on like, you know, TV or ESPN or whatever, you know, Street League and all that. It's so cool. But like you said, the major change, man, there's just as many girls at the skate park because we go to like kind of the young kid at times, so they're not getting run over by all us old dudes, you know. And it's just as many girls, if not more, than the boys, and it's so cool that and skateboarding has always been very inclusive in general, but it's really just grown to be such a open thing to so many kids, and it's so cool for me to see, you know, like. Because we had to scrape for whatever we could and go out missions at 2 a.m. to avoid security and all that. These kids are just got wonderlands designed for them to just get rad, you know.
It's crazy. Like, so man, so much to talk about. Yeah, I grew up in Connecticut, and you were in Massachusetts, and you know I was skateboarding down in Milford where I lived, and then moved up to East Haddam, little smaller town between like Middletown and Hartford. And, you know, we were getting the cops called on us all the time. You know, skateboarding is not a crime. Stickers were a real thing. It wasn't that
totally. Yeah.
It was crazy.
It wasn't just a statement of fact back then. Right. It was a sort of a act of rebellion to say that. Yeah. And now it's like, no, literally it's not a crime and it's welcome everywhere. And we're going to build you these amazing things. Whereas, in Boston, we used to have to go on missions at like literally after midnight or 1 a.m. and go hit the financial district and still get kicked out, you know, no matter what. But which, you know, it has probably lost a little of that old kind of punk edge to it just because of that. But man, the fact that like people get to kind of express themselves through skateboarding without also worrying about catching like a case is a good thing, you know?
Yeah. At the end of the day, right. If you're not in the back of a cop car or behind, you know, so like, that's great.
It's a good thing. Yeah,
exactly. It's a win. Yeah, man.
I'll give up some of the punk cred to not have to like get chased by police, but to enjoy my
Right.
Sunday.
Seriously, 100%. Yeah. That's awesome. I actually have an old school MVP. Now Tony Hawk tattoo right here, skate and destroy.
Nice.
And yeah, that
Nice.
was surreal. I live in Oceanside now. Been here for a little bit. And like in my backyard, Oceanside Vista, Bob Burnquist's Dreamland is like 15 minutes from here.
Oh,
Tony
that's
Hawk's like,
amazing, man.
yeah, he's down the road. Bam Margera was just skating in Encinitas, like, half hour from here. Danny Way, all these legends. It's like, oh, Christian Asoy, all the Del Mar
Yeah.
skate park stuff. It's like, whoa.
That's crazy. That's mind blowing. To think of that as a kid, it's just like you wouldn't even imagine that,
Right?
but it's crazy.
Yeah. So I haven't even done this yet. Let me read your bio. Brian Fair, vocalist for Shadows Fall, Overcast, Hell Night, and Downpour. I didn't even know about those two. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm in too many bands.
Too many bands. I know. Jeez. Story of my life too. I understand. Never near as successful. That's great. Brian's been yelling at people from stage for too many decades to count. Now I just chase two kids around and occasionally yell at people from stage. Just don't jump quite as high while doing it. Still skateboarding and searching for the light. Honestly, dude, I didn't even read that till right this moment, and that's funny. That's perfect. Very apropos for our conversation.
Indeed.
So, my man, let's go back. Like, if I may ask, how old are you? You're late 40s?
Yeah, 48, going to be 49 in May. So yeah,
okay.
Creeping up on that half a century mark,
Yeah. All right. So I'm coming up on 46 in June myself. My brother's birthday is in May. So we're all, we're in that era. So, all right. So take me back, like Brian as a kid, what was your life like? And you can go any way you want with this, but what was it for you that got you excited about skateboarding or music? What was it? Metal at first? Was it a different kind of music? Like, well, I guess let's start there and we'll see where we go.
Yeah, I kind of grew up, typical Massachusetts suburb, about half hour outside of Boston, and got into music very early. I will say my parents weren't like musical as far as playing instruments or any of that, but they were always jamming like old doo-wop and lots of 50s like oldies and stuff like that, and we were always singing in the car. But then me and my brother, he's a couple of years older than me, got into kind of traditional metal pretty early. Like we had a cool neighbor, a cool older neighbor, and so we were listening to like Kiss and Rush and like that stuff like pretty early on. And I remember the first cassettes I bought of my own choice with my own money was on the same day I got Ozzy, Blizzard of Oz, and Men at Work, Business as Usual on the same day. And which both are still in the vinyl collection upstairs, still get spins. And that Men at Work is underrated, man. That band slays, first of all.
No doubt.
Yeah, the drummer's hi-hat hand is like one of my favorite things in music. Like, and the dude just had such groove. But anyway, I digress. So got into metal pretty early, and me and my brother were like consuming anything that had guitars at that time. Watching old, MTV. It was before even Headbangers Ball, so we were watching like Dial MTV to catch a like the Wasted Years video by Iron Maiden or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
And my parents were pretty supportive of that pretty early on, where I started going to concerts really early, obviously with like older, chaperones, like whether it was like uncles or like the cool older guy across the street. But I ended up going to like arena shows. I saw like Aerosmith with Guns N' Roses on the Appetite for Destruction tour, saw Def Leppard on the Hysteria tour, like in the Round and all that. And so that, like, I'll never forget, Cinderella was opening for Bon Jovi on that Slippery and Wet tour. And I walked in and I saw Tom Kiefer singing, and I think they were playing the song Night Songs. And I just looked at him, I was like, that's all I ever want to do. Like, that's it. Like, that's the move right there. Like, I want to be in a rock band. And from there, things just sort of progressed in a heavier way. And a lot of that had to do with skateboarding. Like, I got into skateboarding probably as most kids in the 80s, like through getting like a, supermarket board first, like just
Barriflex,
a little, just some generic thing. And then finally convincing my parents to get me a Steve Caballero Dragon Paul Peralta board, for Christmas. And that was the end. That was it. Yeah. Once I had a real skateboard, I was all in. That's all I wanted to do. It's all I thought about. I started consuming anything I could, Thrasher magazines and all the old Bones Brigade videos.
Yep.
And that definitely led musically to the heavier side of things. You know, I'd started hearing some of the early thrash bands, but then I'd see these bands in Thrasher, like, you know, the Dead Kennedys and Bad Brains. And it was all those Sessions t-shirt ads in those old Thrashers. I'd be like, what are these bands? What am I missing? How have I not heard of this stuff? What's going on? These logos look so cool. And that really got me into some, you know, punk rock pretty early on. You know, I was listening to like the first Suicidal Tendencies record and Black Flag the first 4 years. I remember those were the two first ones that I kind of had that I just went, you know, just would listen to front to back over and over again, studying the liner notes, looking at all the cool like pictures and just imagining what that world was like. And that really kind of started shaping my musical interests, where it became all about just hardcore punk rock and thrash. But at the time, you know, I was still probably 12, 13 years old. So getting to shows wasn't really an option, you know, yet.
Yeah.
So, but then early on through skating some ramps, I met Mike D, who's, you know, now in Killswitch Engage, but who I ended up starting Overcast with. And we were skating at my friend's backyard ramp. And he's like, hey, this weekend, I'm going to see this band Leeway at the Channel in Boston.
Love Leeway.
Yeah. And I had just read about Leeway's Enforcer demo or something in Thrasher. Yeah. And was like, trying to pretend like I knew what was what. Like, oh yeah, I'd love to go see Leeway, man. That'd be cool. Like I had no idea what I was getting into, you know? So he somehow convinced my parents to let him take me. I didn't have, you know, I think I was 14 or 15 at the time. And he had his driver's license because he was a couple years older than me. So we went, and that era of the Channel in Boston was a pretty like tough hardcore scene, you know? Yeah. So here I come in my like Limpy's hat with like a, you know, Schmidt Stick shirt on and like, you know, some like Jams shorts and tiny like 110-pound little soaking wet kid, you know, and these monsters are just destroying each other in the pit. And I'm like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen, you know?
Ever. Yeah.
And it was a sick lineup too. It was Leeway, Breakdown from New York, Only Living Witness, who was a Boston band.
Love it.
And this band Said and Done.
Yep.
And I told Mike D got a picture of me crowd surfing for the first time and all that. And like, once I went out, I was hooked. I was like, that's all I want to do on the weekends, you know, and started just going to any hardcore show I could in the suburbs, in the city, at travel, you know, anywhere I could. And that was the impetus for Overcast starting is, you know, Mike D had been in a couple of like local, more punkish hardcore bands, you know, more in that like kind of Minor Threat sort of vibe. Right. And so he had some riffs floating around. And at the time I'd actually been playing bass in a more like punk rock band. You know, we did like covers of Skid Row and Sex Pistols, you know, like that stuff. Yeah. And I played bass, but he was a bass player and he had the riffs. So I was like, he's like, well, then you should just sing. So I stumbled into singing for a hardcore band completely by default, you know, just because I knew a drummer who was sick. He already played bass. And I was like, all right, I'll sing. And then, you know, then it was about trying to find a guitar player from there. So of course we grabbed the most metal dude with a mullet we knew, and that was Pete. And that was the beginning of Overcast. So yeah, it happened pretty quick and random, but yeah, so it was cool.
All right. So much to unpack there. I'm keeping my eye on the clock because we're going to have to do like probably part 2, 3, 4 of this or something. Yeah. But all right. So just a few things to identify with. One, Guns N' Roses, amazing. One of my first concerts was Guns N' Roses and Metallica. It was the Use Your Illusion store. So respect. You got to see them on Appetite.
Dude, got to see them on Appetite, and dude, they were. I was an Aerosmith fan at the time, but like that was when Aerosmith was getting like less dangerous and more you know, like ballads. And dude, Guns N' Roses came out and just destroyed. Like he had the full white Paradise City, you know, leather jacket and stuff. It was amazing.
That's well, so yeah, I had the Illusions, but it was Metallica Black Album and Faith No More on the Angel Dust tour. Yes. That was pretty sick. It was 93. My dad and my best friend at the time and his dad took us out of school. We went up to Foxborough Stadium in Massachusetts, actually. 8th row seats. Mike Patton smashed his microphone and it like flew out. landed one seat in front of us. I almost got it, and they didn't. Saw my first like boobs, on the big jumbotron.
Yeah.
I was like, it's great. It was one of the best times of my life. There was that. Powell Peralta skateboarding. Yeah. Holy shit, dude. Like, Bones Brigade videos. Like,
dude, the Bones Brigade videos, man.
They were everything.
All
Band,
about. Yep.
This.
Because as fun as Animal Chin was, which was super fun at the time, especially for a kid, when Public Domain first came out, that was the game changer where I was like, whoa, street skating. What is this?
Yes.
Like, what is going on? Like,
Ray Barbie.
The vert ramp stuff always blew my mind, but we didn't have a vert ramp that we could go like hang out with. But then I see Ray Barbie and those guys like just skating curbs and benches, and I'm like, this is it. This is happening.
And so for me, that was a seed was planted because McRad, Chuck Treece's band, they did that song Weakness.
Yep.
Let's go back to like 2008, 9, 10. I was doing a very short-lived documentary series with a friend in New Haven. We went down and filmed for a weekend with Chuck and his kids. And I got to play drums with Chuck Treece, and we did. So I played Weakness on the drums. I'm like, dude, you don't even know. Like, this was it, man.
This was the soundtrack to our life. It's crazy because Chuck, I've met him in passing once, but I've become kind of like Instagram friends with him, and him liking pictures of my kids skateboarding was like, to me, was the coolest shit possible. I was like, I can't believe this is happening.
And I didn't even know, like, when I was there, he had these plaques on his wall. He was drumming on a Pearl Jam album, and there was a live 7-inch or something. He also Billy Joel, River of Dreams, went platinum. He had that on his wall. And that video was filmed in Connecticut, near where I live. Like, it's so crazy how these things come together.
It's crazy how much that guy has done too. Chuck has just been he's had his hand in so many amazing things through the years. And what's crazy is at this point he's still skateboarding, still making music just for fun, jamming with anybody. Like, it's so cool.
I'll send you when we're done. I'll send you I know you're busy, but if you want to check it out, it's like 20 minutes. It's really dope. Like,
I would love to.
His parents, like his kids, like his brother, very cool stuff. And a performance. They were doing a benefit for Chief before Chief from the Deftones passed away. So they did a benefit for that. It was really special. And then Thrasher Magazine, dude, when my first book came out, I remember Simon Schuster was like, where do you want us to send it? Oprah, this and that. I'm like, that'd be neat. But I was like, send it to Thrasher. And they did. And there were so here's like, for me, man, like some surreal moments was Tony Hawk endorsed my first book. And I saw him on a documentary about this dude, Joseph Campbell, talking about the hero's journey with Deepak Chopra and all these other guys. I was like, oh shit, Tony Hawk's like into that. Maybe he'll be into this. And he did. And I sent it to Thrasher, and this dude there saw Tony's name on it and started looking at it. And then he sent him through it. And he's like, skateboarding, punk rock, hip hop, hardcore, Ram Dass, Maharaji, spirituality. Like, oh shit, let me check it out. And dude, all my first 3 books were all reviewed in Thrasher, and it's like,
oh, that's incredible.
Dude, it's like, whoa. So skateboarding, back to Overcast, hardcore 90s. You probably don't remember. I've played with your band a number of times. One of the shows, University of Hartford. My friend Bernie, we were in this band called Claremont, very terrible, noisy noisecore band. We'd play at Studio 158 all the time.
I remember 158 well.
Yeah. Charlie
so many
Critch.
Good shows there.
Oh, yeah, so many. Yep. We played it. What was it? Toad's Place too, but the Tune-In.
Tune-In was like the first place that like embraced Overcast in a serious way. So
it was me and my brother and my friend Bernie, who went later on being Cable, Hydra Records, all that ISIS stuff. We would do the drive. It was like once a month almost, like you guys and Dissolve. Paul's
totally.
Love Paul. And then also
we were like the house band. Us and Dissolve shows were like at the Tune-In, and I always remember Fernando, the owner, being like, "Oh, sorry, only a couple $100, barely anyone here tonight." The place is completely sold out and insane.
Right. Yeah, a little shady, but yeah. And then the LNG in New London. I remember you guys were doing. I think it was a compilation. I forgot the dude. He was out of Old Saybrook.
The Endless Fight comp. Endless Fight.
Yeah, I remember I don't know if it was you or Mike D. You guys got in a fight. Mike D threw his bass at the wall and walked off stage. You did one or two songs. I was like, no, like, yeah, I was there to see you guys. Like, cool. Like, what was it? The guy from Hatebreed that passed away, unfortunately, his side project,
Frostbite.
Frostbite.
Yes,
They
Boulder. Yeah,
played
Boulder. Man,
Boulder. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That dude, good times back in
Indeed,
the day.
those were good times, man.
Yeah. And then the reunion. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was such a fun time for like that era of hardcore. There was so much like stuff going in different directions,
Right.
Whereas now, like the idea of singing, screaming, super normal, metal mixed with hardcore is super normal. But like then there was sort of a bedrock, but then everyone was taking things in different directions. And I remember Connecticut was at that time was all about these like groove riffs and a lot of like melodic little, little arpeggio stuff. And like, that was kind of that like New Haven sound, Josta 14 and Frostbite and all those bands, and then, some of the darker stuff was creeping into, and then you had like Dissolve, who was tuning down a Z and just playing insane riffs, so it was such a cool time to see all these little new ideas getting spawned that have since been kind of like fulfilled and taken their the next level. But like then it was like just the primordial ooze of like all that stuff happening.
Dude, that's what I love. Like if you went to Studio 158 on any given weekend, you could see Overcast, you could see Ashes, Frail, Contagion, Threadbare, like all these Clickataticatawi, all these obscure bands, like Big Mistake, Josta 14, whatever, like little Jamie Josta, booking shows at 158,
what the hell? Crazy.
It's nuts. And then we're bouncing around into the listeners. I hope you're enjoying this as much as we are. If you're stuck in this long, then you're our people. But to go from from playing, did Overcast play 158? I know you've been to shows there.
Yeah, no, we did.
Okay.
Yep.
So to go from these little 158 shows, you could fit maybe on a good day, 100 people there. I know Earth Crisis would play there and Snapcase and
I remember seeing Snapcase there, and you couldn't stand inside the building. There was literally people in the doorway,
Yes, or outside 108 Converge, Cave In. It was always crazy. But then you mentioned, Mike D goes on to Killswitch, who's in huge, they're on the Resident Evil soundtrack for a movie, and that was crazy to me. I think Earth Crisis got on Ozfest, and I start hearing Hatebreed in major movies, and then you're singing for Shadows Fall, you're playing in front of what you've played Wacken, right? Or these big
huge, we've done every mega festival you can imagine. We've gotten so lucky. Right? We've done arena tours, which never thought that would happen, and opening for Slipknot and playing with Metallica and a huge soccer stadium in Dallas. It's crazy. And to go from people would see flyers from some of those 90s shows and be like, oh my God, Overcast, Converge, Cave In. That must have been insane. I'm like, dude, there was 70 people and it was in a barn in Haverhill, Massachusetts.
And it was perfect. It was
perfect. But it's the perception of what it was probably like. You're like, no, that scene was tiny. And the fact that out of Overcast, you have two bands, Shadows Fall and Killswitch Engage, that went on to be nominated for Grammys and do all this stuff. That came out of this small little Massachusetts band that, it's still mind blowing for me to kind of think about. And that scene at that time, it spawned so much creativity that none of the bands that came out of it that got big sound the same. So you have Converge, who doesn't sound anything like Killswitch. And then you have Hatebreed, who doesn't sound anything like Shadows Fall, but we kind of all came out of a very small, tight-knit sort of group of friends who shared a lot of common influences, but all filtered them through our own experiences and our own eclectic tastes and took them in our own directions. And to see everyone, that was the best part. We'd be at a festival in Germany or even Japan, and you look in the dressing rooms and it's all my buddies from Boston and Connecticut. And, it was nuts to see. So.
It was such a special time, man. Like I said, I never reached any heights like you. I did Ground Zero for a while, and we played a lot. We did, Today's a Day, I Hate God. We were playing ISIS and Kiss It Goodbye, Dead Guy. That was amazing. What an honor to share those stages. And my friend Mel, great friend, they did Wrench in the Works, and they went on to I think it was Face Down Records, which was a huge label in their own scene. And and I remember seeing their records back when you go into actual music stores and CDs. It's oh shit, whoa, and They made it, but they didn't. We're still touring in vans and $20 for gas.
Exactly.
And what they just you shared the barn story. You remember that band Frail? I don't know if they
Oh
were
yeah.
from Virginia. Yeah, we used to play with them. My band Claremont, and I remember like this dude came out. They on the way down. I don't know if they found it or they like nozzled off this was a gas nozzle, and they had this little hose attached. And as soon as Frail, the spastic noisecore band started, this dude jumped out, I think either from this behind the drum set or the crowd, I don't know, but he had a gas nozzle and he was naked and just started freaking out, like dancing around. Every water was flying, and it was perfect. Like,
yeah,
what the fuck?
Anything goes back then, man. And it was also a time where there was such eclectic shows too. It was before everything got so like subgenre based. Like you would have noisecore bands playing with thrash bands, playing with like poppy punk bands, and it didn't matter. Everyone was there for the same reasons for DIY hardcore punk rock, and and it was an era that can never be recreated because like it was so word of mouth. It was so pure. Like it was such a small little, you needed to know,
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
like last minute shows. My brother, I remember I was working at a video store in East Haddam and he jotted down, I think it was like, he did 158 in the afternoon, then down to the tune-in, or vice versa. It was like 108 in Snapcase, and they played both venues in the same day. Or I don't know, maybe you guys were playing with Dissolve, and then he bounced up to see them up at one. It was such a goddamn. I'm so glad I lived through that, man. Like how lucky are we?
Indeed, it's good times.
So something I remember. I wasn't ready for it yet, but I remember seeing you at correct me if I'm wrong, a big Buddha tattoo on your arm.
Yes. Yep.
And I remember listening to your lyrics, and I've gone back over the years because I was actually very atheist at the time. I didn't know the difference between religion, spirituality. I was into like chokehold, fuck God, all that. Yeah. Like I was ignorant, I didn't know what I was doing. But I remember, later on in life, I found my way into this path. And you spoke in some of your lyrics about, I don't know if it's specifically veganism or vegetarianism. And on my show, I don't, hey, whatever works for you works for you. I don't judge anyone. Like it's about kindness, compassion. But I would love to hear a little bit about that. I don't know if you're still into that stuff or was that a time or what was that like for you?
No, it's funny because I kind of came up similar where I was, super into Slayer and writing 666 on everything. Right. And, Same, And honestly, I grew up Catholic and I had become, incredibly disillusioned with organized Catholicism at an early age. And my parents were very cool about like, hey, at a certain point, once you're old enough, you make your own decision on if this is for you or not. And I already knew that it was not. But through, after being like, total death metal, like, kill for Satan stuff, I started just through, I'd always been a reader and I started reading just, expanding beyond nonfiction and started getting a little more into philosophical writings. And that really led into reading a lot of, Eastern philosophy. And by the time I got to college, when I went to Boston University, I took a class called Philosophy and Religion. And it was kind of my first exposure to the deeper philosophies of things such as Buddhism or Taoism. And also at the time, I started dabbling in Hatha yoga, mostly first for physical reasons, stretching and just trying to take care of my body. But that led also to transcendental meditation and things like that. And it was at first, a lot of it was the classic college, like, you're just like, oh, I'm absorbing everything the world has to offer. And I really started like I can look back at lyrics, and even at the time, I might not have known that that's where it was coming from, but I can see a lot of my philosophical sort of arc, like through what I was writing. And I can remember, I'm like, oh, I'll read the lyrics to like Scar the Mind from Overcast, and I'm like, oh man, I was totally reading Emerson, and it's so there's like probably boosted lyrics right out of like his works and things like that. And then also I could tell when I started getting more into like some of the psychedelic writers like Terence McKenna, and I started getting into like these ideas of like, you know, the idea that the mushroom was probably the sacred cow that people were worshiping and all this stuff. And like, you know, you could see the little avenues I was veering off into. And then by the time Shadows Fall lyrics came around, the first few records, man, you could tell I was really reading a lot of Buddhist philosophy and and doing a lot of meditation. Like a song like Thoughts Without Words is straight up like as 101 like transcendental meditation as you can get. And then a song, literally, I have a song called "The First Noble Truth" on the first Shadows Fall record. That I was just, you know, just studying all that stuff and learning it, and also wanted to write something. If I have to sing it and scream it in this physical way, I have to connect to it. So I couldn't write like, you know, demons and dragons stuff. It would have been totally transparent that I was just, you know, trying to be metal, and I wasn't into gore and death and dismemberment. So like trying to do some sort of Cannibal Corpse thing wouldn't have worked. So I was just writing about what I knew and what I wanted to share. And also at a time when metal was definitely into the darker side of things, I was like, you know what? I'd love to bring a little light to the equation here. And even the reason the second Shadows Fall record was called The Art of Balance is I wanted to balance a positive spiritual message with very aggressive music, you know, and and just trying to have that light and dark. And so that it's weird. I don't even know when the shift really happened, because some of the first Overcast stuff is really like, you know, teenagey, heartbreaky, like fuck the world, like I'm mad at everything stuff. And some of that was Mike D too, who at the time was mad at the world. So, you know, it made sense to have to get that out. And I was kind of in that teeny angst mode as well. But then once our music was getting more serious, I wanted the lyrics to reflect that. And I wanted them to come from a honest place that was personal. So, you know, it just sort of evolved over time.
You know, as I'm listening, I'm paying attention. In my first book, Indie Spiritualist, I was talking to my friend John Roy, who sang for actually my first band before Claremont, Man Resorts Morality, and we did. It was terrible, but it was fun. You know, like we did like these. It was just like breakdown after breakdown. You know, like it was just
there's nothing better than breaking down the breakdown. You know?
Yeah, how many busts can we fit into a minute and a half? Let's find out. But yeah, he said, where was it? It began as an innocent yet angsty kinship with grunge, punk, and hardcore music, which I fell in love with from the very first time I put needle to record. Here it is. A friend of a friend described the punk hardcore scene as, quote, a last-ditch effort for authenticity in a world increasingly devoid of it. I love that. You know, like, and it never surprises me how many people I find started fighting in my, like, I fell on the path around 24. I'm 45 now, but like, you know, as years go by, I've interviewed, you know, the dudes from Neurosis and ISIS, Aaron Turner, you know, like talking about Aaron's very much into meditation, the cyclical nature of ISIS, you know, like I didn't know it at the time. I was driving from East Haddam to New Haven for college, and I'd put on, you know, what is it? Through Silver and Blood. And next thing I know, I'd be in New Haven. And it wasn't that I was lost in thought. I was lost in like a music meditation, but I didn't know it. I wasn't meditating. It was so, you know, that it was like,
and that's what's funny about meditations, and the reason why I think people may not realize that it's something. It's not just about sitting in silence and whatever. It's about being fully in a moment, regardless of what transported you there. And you know, it can happen through music, through physical movement, through through silence and stillness. Like it's about, and that's something that I think you do kind of tap into later on in life and realize like, oh wow, like I can be meditative on the simplest act of like washing this dish if I'm completely in this moment and focused and at one with everything that's happening, the sounds, the feeling, the sight, everything. So yeah. But at a younger age, you know, like you just pictured as like, I'm not going to go sit like a monk for hours at a time and not move, you know, which now honestly sounds like a wonderful thing in such a chaotic world. But as a youth, that didn't really appeal as much. So
I know,
but yeah.
Yeah, as I'm getting older, it's like, Thich Nhat Hanh has one of his monasteries over in Escondido. Becoming a monk might not be the end of the world, but
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but no, I've written about this. I've talked about it. So if anyone's listening and I'm, repeating myself, I apologize. But a couple of instances that come to mind, speaking of meditation and music, where it's kind of outside of the box, I think most people, but three quick ones. One, I was watching Van Halen, and it was when they reunited with David Lee Roth. We got free tickets at a casino, and the bass player was, I think it was Eddie Van Halen's son, Wolfgang.
Wolfgang.
Like
yeah, Wolfgang.
It was great. But I remember while Eddie Van Halen was doing the eruption solo, I was watching his fingers up on the jumbotron, and I talked to my other teacher outside of Ram Dass, Ken Wilbur, about this, and Ken's like, I explained it to him. He's like, yeah, that was Satori, dude. I got to a place where I was sober. I was watching his fingers, hearing the notes, and it was such precise stillness, one pointedness. Like everything else was gone, completely gone. Like all that was happening was that the sound, the fingers. Chris had left the building, and I almost fell actually into the row in front of me. I was like, what the fuck just happened? Then I was covering a Slayer show, I think for Suicide Girls, and I was up in the front photographing. And flames, upside down crosses, and Marshall lamps, and Kerry King, and Tom Arango and Dutch, and Hannah Man was still alive, and and Lombardo. I remember I was doing Rob Doss's "I Am Loving Awareness" mantra while I'm photographing, and I'm just in my mind thinking, "I am loving awareness." I'm kind of laughing to myself because, like, if any of these Slayer dudes know I was doing, they'd kick my fucking ass. Yeah. But no, they wouldn't, because metal community, we pick each other up, and
exactly.
But I remember I had this moment, and Ram Dass had talked about it, and I didn't have it until this experience where the more you do the mantra, then the mantra starts to do you, and everything that comes into your like periphery in your experience becomes that mantra. And so here are these dudes crowd surfing, thousands of people behind me, and the flames and everything. And it's just literally this beautiful dance of like, I am loving awareness. And I was like, wow. And if like fucking 60-year-old Chris heard me saying this, like he would kick my ass right now, right? But
so like, yeah, he'd be like, "This is hell awaits. You can't get all. Yeah, what are you doing? Thinking about love and peace, like you
take off those Chuck Taylors with the 666 written on them. You can't wear those." And the last one was it was a different concert. Slayer played this too. It's a rock star energy thing, and I was covering that for maybe a Revolver magazine. And Anthrax, Hatebreed, everybody was there, and Motorhead was playing. It's a couple of years before Lemmy died, and then never got to see Motorhead. And there I am, and there's Lemmy, God, playing. He's got that beautiful wooden bass. And I start thinking about interdependence while I'm photographing it. And I'm like, oh shit, like that bass, that came from a tree. And that tree like needed water to come down on it. And that water needed the clouds. And then, my mind's bouncing all around. And like, there needed to be somebody to chop that tree down, sadly, and then some parents had to have sex to have that child, and just the interconnectedness of the fabric of the universe. Like it's literally available to us at all times. It doesn't matter,
that at all times. That's the other thing is, most mornings I start with just like at least moments of stillness, and usually, some mantra to start a day on a clean slate. Yeah. And what you need to remember is even in the chaos of the rest of your day, that feeling is still just sitting there right by your side. You just have to either tap back into it or just take a moment to just quiet yourself to get back there. But it's always there.
Yes, it is. So that's like my teacher Ram Dass says, be here now. And the more you practice that meditation and mindfulness and mantra and yoga, whatever it is that works for you, I don't advocate one thing over another. It's like you almost become this witnessing awareness of what's going on. Like it's like I almost feel like sometimes there's this thing behind me with the pad and paper. Like, oh, that's interesting. Chris is having a tantrum about this now, or Chris is excited about that. And just kind of laughing at the whole, relearn, the dance, as they say in Hinduism. So you're talking about your practice with mantra. Is that like, do you have a formal practice? Do you, because I know you still tour. I just thought,
I wouldn't say it's formal practice, but every morning that's especially I I'll fall off occasionally and realize like, oh, these are the things that keep me at my best and at my most pleasant for everyone around me, and just for the and for my trajectory forward. And so I try and start each day with just quiet meditation, and usually a mantra, something of like, today is a beautiful day of opportunity. I'm exactly where I need to be, opening myself to the universe, and just something to just get into that moment. And then usually from there, after I usually do at least some sort of physical yoga or stretching, or, something else to get my body in tuned as well. And the older I get, that becomes more and more important to be able to do the things I want to do. But as far as formalizing it, it's just, I know what works best for me. And I know when I've not been able to do that, how I feel. I've gotten more into just physical activity in general, like where I know I need to get deep sweats in my life. And when I'm on tour, that's very easy to attain. I also express myself screaming at people every night, and I get this built up energy out, that fire out. When I'm at home, I have to find other ways to do that as well, whether it's through exercise or skateboarding, or just, bashing on the drums for an hour here or there. And I like to get into that, get all that toxins out of my body physically through the sweat and all that. And so it's been a balance of that, like of mindfulness and then physical, just like tuning the machine, like just keeping the machine steady, to be able to as a, knowing it is more of a vessel than anything else, but to keep that in fine operating, standards, I guess,
Yeah.
And it has come and go. Cause I'll tell you, like, there were times, it's funny, from the second Shadows Fall record, The Art of Balance, to the third, the titles jumped from The Art of Balance to The War Within, because after a year on the road of us getting bigger and bigger, and the lights getting brighter and brighter, and the party getting crazier and crazier, it was real easy to get lost in that stuff, and kind of losing sense of who I was, and trying to be a rock star, or trying to, feeling like I had something to, always had to be on, always had to be performing, always had to be presenting myself as, not just Brian, as Brian from Shadows Fall, and that pressure really started to kind of get to me. And that album was kind of about focusing on a lot of that. And the song, The Light That Blinds, was about that. It was like kind of a metaphor for like the stage lights can blind you from the fact that you're just no longer like being who you are,
Yeah.
And it's a tough balance, because the road is not only physically can be demanding, there's a lot of temptation, there's a lot of chaos, and it became more and more important to me to find those moments to calm it all down, quiet it all down, reset, refocus, and try and remember that like all is one, but everything is nothing at the same time. So it's like, I want to enjoy this. I want to see the world. I want to make the most of this experience, but I also have to remind myself at the end of the day that we are all just a little blip in the radar, and that these moments, as powerful as they may seem, in the grand scheme of things, are just another breath in and out. And that's all that matters, So it was a balancing act for sure. Granted, with maturity, like, things could become easier. And also, once you've been through some of those wild things and survived, you're like, okay, like, I've done it, I've seen it, it's all good. And nowadays, families reorganize those priorities in a way where that's, always the main focus. But I've also realized, to be the best I can for my family, I have to be at my best, which means taking the time to do the things I know help me get back on that path, that help me stay focused, that help me stay in the moment. And that can be difficult to sometimes have to be like, look, I would love to play and go jump around and do all that stuff with the kids, but I'm like, no, I have to take this time for myself to just get back where I need to be. And in the long run, knowing that's better. So, but it's always going to be a learning process, which is a beautiful thing about life, is, there's always new lessons, there's always new experiences, and there's always another way to look at things.
Yeah, man, you just touched on something that's so important to me, that I finally at 45 am taking more seriously, and has led me in the past. Now I'm a person in recovery from drugs and alcohol. Like, I lived that life, and I, from there, started working with people in the field, whether it was addiction or suicide attempts, self-harm, eating disorders, like teens especially. And I was pouring myself into that while writing my books and public speaking and traveling. Like you went the music route, which, my heart always wanted to, but I went the writing, speaking route. And where I wasn't getting blinded by the lights, I was struggling with imposter syndrome. Like, fuck, I'm speaking with NASA physicists, Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle, and my teachers. My podcast is on Ram Dass's network, and Alan Watts' podcast is on this. Like, what the fuck? But circling around to what you said about taking care of yourself, and I think it's a little off topic, but to me, they're together. Is finding time. Yeah, like you've got to be good for you, so you can be good for other people. That's huge. And that led me huge. With the teens, like I ended up relapsing because after 8 years of like the cutting and the burns and the ones that left and died from overdose suicides, I was just giving, not taking care of me, and it almost feels selfish.
But that's the balancing act. Is it does at times feel selfish, and you have to remind yourself that I can't be what they're going to need from me, or that I should be giving back to the world if I can't get to where I need to be inside. And it does feel selfish at times, even the physical time of it. You're like, if I to put this time set aside for myself, just that inherently can feel selfish, but it really isn't. And it is not only necessary, it's beneficial for the grander scheme of things. And I understand what you mean about the imposter syndrome stuff, is I would get that a lot of like, oh, your words inspired me for this and this and that. And I'm like, meanwhile, probably half wasted, just like, like knowing like, oh, whatever, I'm just a piece of shit. Like, you don't need to listen to me, man. But then you have to realize, you're like, any way that you can create inspiration, even from someone who might have gotten the message that was different than what you're putting out there, but it inspired them in a way that you never even thought possible. That's incredible. Like, that's the most powerful thing that I've gotten back from any of the music or lyrics or anything I've ever done, is that sort of impact that you've had on someone that that was never the intention. It's always, I was writing these things to get either through my own demons, or to express an idea, or to try and clarify an idea. Half the time it's me trying to figure out what I'm thinking. And like a song like Inspiration on Demand, it's a song about how you'll never capture the moment of inspiration in the words. You're always going to be, falling a little short of that ideal. And that's good. Like, that's the exercise. That's what you should be trying to do. You're never going to attain perfection, because that's impossible. But the fact that you're trying to even just focus these thoughts and try and express them in a way, inspiration and expression will always be one step behind. So it's like, you're never going to be able to explain light, but just the exercise of it can be so productive. So yeah, it's crazy. Never thought that screaming into a stick would take me to these places, but it's crazy what it can do.
That's important too. Like, I look back at a lot of my stuff. I do a lot more ambient stuff now. I work with residents in a very weird hybrid unit, and I do ambient guitar meditations and things. But back in the day, and I still play like hardcore metal. I love that stuff. I never won't. But like 2005. I was in this band. I was in a very dark time, a relapse. It's called Mouthful of Shotgun. And I went up and recorded with Steve Austin from Today's the Day. That dude, like back in the heyday, drinking Maker's Mark and snorting Ritalin and just walked up.
It's getting weird.
It was so weird, dude. And like, it was the first time I ever went to withdrawals, like, and I'm sleeping on his floor. I was drumming. Oh, this is another time, actually, the second time. I was drumming in a band, and a lot of weird. I love Steve. He's a good friend. He's a great guy, but he saw a lot of crazy shit. Steve, all the guns were getting fucked up with guns and shit. Like, it was rough. But those like lyrics, it was so cathartic. Like the screaming, the darkness. It was, if I didn't have that, I might have killed myself. Dude. Like, I might have. I don't know. But something I want to ask you before it is, speaking of the screaming, dude, your voice, like, not the fanboy here, but like, there's a lot of great metal vocalists. Randy Blythe, awesome. Jamie Haper, great. but yours for me has always been it. Like, how the fuck did that dude get the bowels of hell to come up like that? And then you also get the higher shit going. Like, dude, like how? Like,
I have no idea. And it's funny because unless the music is playing that loud, I can't even make those sounds like just like a cappella, like, and I am a pretty soft spoken person, like, and I have kind of a high, reedy talking voice.
Yeah.
But when, for some reason, when that mic's in my hand, like I don't know where it comes from. I don't have much technique. I do some vocal warm up and stuff like that, but that's mostly just to not hurt my throat. I don't know, man. I would right before a show, if I'd be feeling nervous, I'd always just say to myself, I'm like, I got to find the voice of the lion, got to find the lion and, go back to my Rasta roots and try and find the voice of the lion. And, it's crazy. Cause, it's really funny to me sometimes to be like doing a song that I know is about like either meditation or like environmentalism, and I'm like just gutturally just blasting it out, and like it's always kind of makes me smile because like, and I'm a generally really happy person, in general, and pretty goofy on stage, but then the voice is like, is that dude being tortured?
That's why I always I felt a resonance with you, because you were very eclectic, and I've always felt that way too. And I think it's just some most of us did in that scene. But like, here you are, this dude with these dreads, a Buddha tattoo, very skater vibe, like, but fucking also screaming like you are. And yeah, like the reunion shows were always fun with Dissolve. Like, I remember like Ain't No Party, like an Overcast Party, and you guys have like, you go from these Slayer early fucking blast beat riffs down to like fucking almost like hip hop breakdowns, there's Begging for a Difference, probably favorite Overcast song, like at least top 3, if not favorite one, but like I couldn't craft a better song. Fuck you for writing that song, Overcast, because I wish I wrote it, but thank you for writing that song. But yeah, like, are you also into hip hop? Like, did that ever influence you guys?
Yeah. It's funny. My hip hop era is very early 90s, like 1990 to like 95 was like 93. The year specifically has some of the greatest albums that ever came out. Souls of Mischief, 93 Infinity, Illmatic, 36 Chambers, Gangstar, Hard to Earn, like all that came out in 1 year. It was nuts. And it's funny because I still listen to a decent amount of hip hop, but I usually go back to like that kind of stuff, whether it's hieroglyphic stuff or like beat nuts,
Deltron, all of it,
all that stuff. And there is tons of great, there's tons of great new hip hop. Like I know Billy Woods out of Brooklyn is amazing, and there's some different stuff. But I tend to trend back to the stuff that I kind of like was my blueprint. But musically, I was always all over the place, man. I especially during the peak Overcast stuff, I was doing Dead Tour until Jerry died. I was seeing Fish in their earliest incarnations. I was going to tons of jazz shows around Boston. And I was into all of it. And I've always been big into reggae and 70s dub and all that stuff. I have to listen to tons of music. And a lot of my ideas are inspired. I very rarely out of metal. Like when I'm writing, it's usually a lyric that'll hit me, or a vocal line will come and I'll be like, oh, that reminds me of Spiritualized or something, like some like shoegazy Britpop. And you wouldn't be able to tell in any way. And honestly, it doesn't sound even like what I heard as the idea that was inspired by that. But that's where I know that's where it came from, And that's why I think we were probably a little different, because if you're writing hardcore and your only pool of thought is Madball, Agnostic Front, and Cro-Mags, it's going to sound like New York hardcore. Like it's going to,
and there's nothing wrong with that either.
No, exactly. But if you're mixing that with, with your influences of like, weird Charles Mingus bass lines and like hip hop cadence, it's going to have a different feel. Because honestly, a lot of those bands, like whether it was, Agnostic Front or Cro-Mags, they were bringing in weird influences to create that sound to begin with. So, but it's to this day, I look at my shuffle on like, Spotify or something. I'm like, man, this is the most schizophrenic mix possible.
I know.
And I love it.
Before I moved to California, I think I mentioned you in when we were messaging a while ago, I was doing this thing, a project and I called it Nostalgic Love Letters because essentially it was this very like random. It was like 90s. Everything I loved about like melodic, screamy, what like it was everything. And you know, like you're saying, I was using a lot of like inverted like shoegazy, like whether it was Sia Rose or Mom or fucking Mogwai, Spiritualist, whatever. Like My Bloody Valentine shit. Spotlight's another great band. Like I love those dudes.
Hell yeah.
And I got like Paul from Dissolve did vocals on it. I had 100 Demons, Brendan. I had Brandon from Die My Will, Mike from Pristina. Like it was a 90s fucking. I was talking to Tim from Dead Guy was going to do some vocals. I think I even asked you, like, bro, like Liam from Dillinger was going to do bass. I'm like, let's do a fucking thing. And then I relapsed and came to California. Who knows? Never say never, but like, I love that shit, dude. But that's the beauty of music, you know, like fucking. I just turned my friend on yesterday, the day before, to Krishna Das, this kirtan, Hindu kirtan chanting, and he's like, oh shit. He's a Sufi mystic. He never heard of Krishna Das. I'm like, you ever heard of Krishna Das? He's like, oh, I get it. Universal language, dude.
Indeed it is. Yeah.
So, all right. I mean, we're starting to run out of time. Like I do that. Seriously, we could talk for hours, I'm sure. But I saw recently fucking Shadows Falls play with Hatebreed out in Connecticut. I'm so jealous I'm not going to be there. What are you doing now with your life?
Still we're playing some shows here and there, but I don't think I'll ever be full-time touring again. Like the way we used to. We were an 8 to 10 months out of the year touring band. And that grind is I got to the end of that where I was like, okay, that was amazing, but I can never kind of do that again. Right. But playing shows, and we're making new music. So it's funny. It's the 20th anniversary of our album, The War Within. It's Hatebreed's 30th anniversary as a band. And it's Wayne, their guitar player's 50th birthday. So we're like, we used to always joke that we were old guy rock. We're like, nope, it's official. We're old guy rock.
It shows.
Totally. Sure. So, but I mean, I'm so stoked because the Saturday night we're playing a headlining show in New Jersey, doing the whole War Within album, and then a bunch of other songs with a great mix of bands from like younger bands to old bands. So that's going to be super cool. And then the next day is the Hatebreed show, and be able to play Connecticut, with Hatebreed in 2024 is insane. Cause I've been sharing stages with Jamie since probably 1991 with Josta 14 and Overcast. And then Shadows Fall toured with Hatebreed forever. So it's just so cool that, 30 years later, we're still, jumping around like maniacs on stage and playing these songs that meant so much to us then and have still meant stuff to people now. It's crazy. It's never in a million years did I think that it would have lasted that long. I'm surprised we've even, honestly, to be completely honest, that all of us survived to this point. And unfortunately, some of our friends didn't along the way, a lot. So it's pretty amazing. It's going to be like the ugliest high school reunion of all time.
Some of us are a little fatter. We're grayer.
It's going to be awesome. Exactly. It's going to be rad, but very excited to do that. And it's going to be, it's now the shows, since we only do maybe 5 or 6 a year, they become so special that, and it's funny how much more we prepare from them now. We never practiced. Shadows Fall was terrible about rehearsing. Sure. So we'd always be like, we're touring. We don't need to rehearse. We'd maybe practice once before a tour. We started practicing before these shows and we're like, oh shit, we're so much better when we practice. We're like, we were lying to ourselves forever. Right. It really does work, So, but we try and take each one and as knowing like, hey man, we don't know if there's going to be another one after this. So let's make this one the best we can and enjoy every second of it. That's what's funny too, is playing this brutal stuff and it's just smiles for miles up there. Like we're all just enjoying ourselves so much. And now like my kids will be side stage. Our bass player, Paul's kid, will be side stage. And we're just like, man, it's a full family affair,
That's so cool. When it's in April, right?
That one's in March. March. Yep. March 17th, St. Patty's Day weekend. So,
oh man, it's the perfect.
So get your shillelagh and hit the pit.
I'm so bummed I won't be there, dude. Yeah, I was talking to a friend the other day in Connecticut. He just got tickets for Dillinger and Dead Guy out in New York. I'm like, what year is this again?
Crazy. That's what's crazy about some of these bills that we'll do. We were like, man, what year is it? Like we just did a Lamb of God did a cruise, which also shows you where we're at in our lives, where we're like, we're now doing heavy metal cruises. And it was, it was Lamb of God, Hatebreed, us, God forbid. We're like, man, it's all our buddies, Municipal Waste. It was so cool to get everyone. And we're like, and Lamb of God's gotten so big that they're like, yo, we can take you all on a boat. We're like, let's do it.
That's so cool, man. Oh, I love that. Well, shit. All right. So that's what Shadows Fall is doing. Might we ever see Overcast again?
We're all still in touch. The only one, Scotty McCoos kind of put his guitar down for good. He didn't play the last couple shows. Our friend Matt filled in, who was amazing. And it was kind of has been part of the scene for forever. But that was strange. That was strange to kind of have a different dude in the mix. But Scotty was just like, he's like, man, I would love for you guys to still go do it. He's just like, I can't. He's like physically playing wise was tough, but also just even social anxiety wise, he's like, it's not where I'm at now. He's like, I'd rather come and watch, but we occasionally will get an offer, and if everyone's around and we can all make it work schedule wise, because everyone's just either got family, work life, or Mike's on tour with Killswitch. But we never rule it out. And anytime we get together, it's a blast. We still have a text thread, between the band that will live on forever, So yeah.
That's great. Yeah, Scott's a good dude, man. We're friends on Facebook and Instagram, and we're always liking each other's shit. He's another that loves eclectic music. Good. Dude.
He turned me on to so much stuff through the years, and he's into everything from like literally just delay pedals just looping weird noises to like the most brutal of death metal. So he's all over it.
Yeah, he's solid, man. I remember I think one of the reunion shows, I don't know, him and Pete would look really annoyed because the guitars would be slightly out of tune, and I get it. Like it's tough for me too, so I get that anxiety. But that's cool, man, that he's down for it, and you guys are, because the fans love it. Like man, if it ever happens, I will fucking fly back to the East Coast.
Hell yeah.
I won't miss that shit. Like,
I'll be sure to let you know, man. I'll give you the heads up. So.
Please do, man. Well, all right. So, I mean, we'll make sure we get the Shadows Fall, like Instagram and links up and Overcast and anything else you're doing, like outside of that you want to mention?
I got a few musical things going on around locally in St. Louis here. I jam with some dudes in a band called Hell Night. That's like, we're like a weird, the vibe is like very Black Flagish, but the riffs are very like James Gang, kind of like, and and we have these weird tunings where that like, it almost sound like his guitar doesn't sound like a guitar. It sounds like a shark bite. It's just crazy. And it's fun, man. It's super aggressive, but it's very like musically like all over the place. It's fun. And and then a while back I was doing some tunes that I think are finally gonna see the light of day, called Downpour. That was me and Derek Kurzweil, who was in a bunch of Boston bands and was in a band Seamless with Jesse from Killswitch Engage. And he had some stuff going on, and he sent me the tunes, and we ended up recording it probably, I think we started in like 2014 or 15. And then kind of put it aside for a while, and then got back to it. And then we finally wrapped everything up like a while ago, and then we just totally slacked and didn't do anything with it. But I think it's finally seen the light of day. So that'll be fun. It's very, I don't even know how to describe it. It's got a lot of groove, but it's very like almost proggy, riffy metal. Like it's crazy. So that's been fun. But yeah, which is weird because I've always wanted to do things that aren't metal, but every project I end up starting to do just starts heading heavier and heavier.
More metal than your mom's kettle. You can't
exactly,
avoid it, man.
Which is funny. On my hard drive of like personal stuff, it's all very shoegazy or like dub like reggae type stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe which no one's ever heard. Maybe one day I'll just dump it all on Bandcamp.
You ever thought about throwing your hat in the writing ring? Your lyrics are always like great.
I always thought I went to school for photojournalism, and then it ended up realizing I would never wake up at 5 a.m. to do like court reports and stuff. So I switched to literature, and I always wanted to be a writer more than a musician. It's just kind of never sat down and really put things together, but one day I would love to. I love to. Dude, so
never say never, and don't hesitate. You got a friend who knows a thing or two about writing some books. So
there you go.
I know some people.
Excellent.
Brian, it's been a pleasure, man. Please, everyone, if you've enjoyed this, follow Brian on Facebook. We'll make sure his, what is it, Brian? You're at Brian.
Brian Shadfall.
Brian Shadfall, yeah. And then there's Shadows Fall, there's Overcast HTC or something. Like, you can find it. It's all over the place. Brian's amazing. Tons of rad stuff on YouTube from Overcast to Shadows Fall. If you want to go check out some of Overcast stuff, there's stuff from the 90s. Like, thank you, YouTube. Technology.
Yes,
like, holy shit.
So many videos that I didn't even know shows that were filmed that were amazing. So it's great.
Return to the Pit, old photographs. There's great stuff out there. So Brian, thank you, man. And if you're interested in spirituality, any teachers, please, Google is your friend. YouTube is your friend. If you're struggling with mental health or addiction, please ask for help. Reach out. Fucking message me, dude. I check my messages. I will, if I can't help you directly, I'll get you resources. Don't be alone. You know, like Brian said earlier, man, it's a miracle we're alive today. If you're listening to this, perhaps it's a miracle you're alive today too. Fucking please, man, don't be quiet. Don't suffer in silence. Reach out.
Do not suffer in silence. There's always someone there for you. So.
Yeah. Brian, big bows, you know, fucking devil horns, you know, deep down, all that. Respect, man. And thank you for your time, brother.
Indeed. Thank you so much for having me on, man. Many blessings.
Absolutely,
we'll talk to you soon.
Peace.